Welcome back to Project Command. I'm Captain Peter Younes, and I'll be your host. On today's episode, we're going to be jumping into all the questions that I've gotten over the last 2 weeks or so. We took a week off last week. I was with my family in Maine, had a great time, ate a lot of seafood, spent some time. We were on a cabin by this lake. I'm struggling to remember the name of the lake. My wife would remember. But in any case, great time. Got to kind of get away for a little bit, so that was great. Took a week off, but we're back, and I'm going to be jumping into all of your questions today. But before we get into it, if you haven't gotten your copy of Project Management in the Fire Service, please go out and grab a copy on Amazon. It's the best-selling, first-of-its-kind book specifically designed to address the project management challenges that are unique to the fire service. So grateful for all the support we've gotten for the book thus far. Gotten a bunch of 5-star reviews on Amazon and a bunch of shout outs on LinkedIn and Facebook. So thank you to everyone who's been a part of that. The support is truly overwhelming. So very grateful for that. And if you don't have your copy yet, go out and grab your copy on Amazon today. And if you would like a signed copy, send me an email with your information, your address, and all that sort of stuff on either you can email to me, projectcommandpodcast@gmail.com, or you can hit me up on LinkedIn and I will happily get one in the mail for you. All right, so with that, let's jump straight in. Okay, here's a really great one to start off with. What's one project every fire department should tackle in the next 5 years? That's Mark from Wisconsin. So I love that question because there's actually a project I think everyone should tackle straight away. And that is a technical debt project. I've talked about this a lot. And so just quickly, let's back up and do a quick definition here. So think about this with technical debt. You know, fire departments have so much going on and they run a lot of different projects. And because there's not enough people ever to do all the things that need to get done, and we've got so many things going on, a lot of times we will get our projects to like 90% done, we'll say, where it's done enough that you can kind of scratch it off the list, but there's still, a policy that you didn't update, or there's some documents you didn't finalize, or you haven't, finished the training for it, or whatever. There's like a few loose ends that are out there. And because there's all right, there's so much going on, let's just get this one done and we'll move on to the next thing. But there's still kind of lingering tasks from that project. Those lingering tasks are what's known as technical debt. It's kind of the leftover work that you haven't finished. And the problem with technical debt is that, the work keeps trickling in. So you think that you're done with the project and you're like, all right, well, that's done. Good job. We cleared that one off the list. But work keeps on trickling in from that project. And when you do that enough times, you have, 10, 15, 20, 30 projects that are at 90%. You have work trickling in from all these, mostly finished projects. And so your people will feel very, very busy, but they don't have that much going on. And they're like, man, why am I so busy all the time? And the answer is because you're working on the projects that are right in front of you, but you're also constantly getting this slow trickle of work from the projects that you thought were completed. So that's the concept of technical debt. And so a project that I really like, and I've actually helped a few chiefs design this project, is to go back and kind of do an audit of the projects that you've done in the last 12, 24 months or whatever, and identify where your technical debt exists. Because technical debt, basically, it's like a hidden tax on your people. It operates like a drag. You have all this extra stuff coming in and it pulls your workforce down. So you're able to get much less done. And so what makes a lot of sense to me is go section by section in your fire department and just get a list of all the projects all the projects that have been completed in the last 12, 24 months, and then go through and ask some basic questions. Hey, are we still getting emails about this project? Or is there still, tasks that we regularly perform because of this project? And if the answer is yes, you likely have technical debt. So go back through and figure out what exactly is not finished. Did we not update the policy so people don't know what to do? So we're constantly getting questions. Have we not identified a program manager? So when this equipment breaks, people don't know who to contact, et cetera, et cetera. And so figure out what's not been done and then just go get it done. And if you are dedicated and you get this out of the way, what you'll find is you lift that drag up, and now all of a sudden your people find that they have a little bit more bandwidth. So I think this is a really great kind of housekeeping project to get done. It's not necessarily the most exciting one, but if you're a newer chief or you just want to kind of get a little bit more efficient, this is a great low cost, extremely low cost way to claw back a little bit of bandwidth for your people. Okay, let's see. Do you think firefighters should be learning AI now, or is it still too early? Alex from California. No, it's not too early. It's definitely not too early. And yes, I think firefighters should be learning it. You know, a couple of things I'll say about that. First off, AI in the fire service is both under and overhyped. I've said this before. It's underhyped in its ability to help with administrative stuff, and it's overhyped in its ability to integrate into operations. I don't think I've seen a lot of technology that's like, oh, we'll do AI this or AI that for operations, like, helping you sift through comments on a call that you're going on, or whatever other kinds of AI bells and whistles are out there. I haven't seen a lot of operational stuff that has blown my mind, but for the administrative side of the fire department, yeah, absolutely. This is something that people should be learning, particularly because that tends to be our weakness anyway. Firefighters, they are trained on obviously how to fight fire, how to cut cars, how to do EMS. They're not trained on how to build an Excel table or how to write a risk analysis or write grants or whatever. There's no real point in a firefighter's career when they learn that stuff. And so a lot of times firefighters, whether they are promoted and put into a new role or whether they're just given a task, like maybe you're on the hazmat team and they say, hey, go find a grant for us to get new 4-gas monitors or whatever. So firefighters regularly, or officers will regularly find themselves in a position where they're being asked to utilize those kinds of skills and they don't have them. And it just so happens that's what AI is best at. So I really like it for that reason, because it is a tremendous force multiplier and it's really good at doing the stuff that firefighters, number one, aren't great at, and number two, don't really want to do it in the first place. So I do, and also, it's a really low cost way to improve your efficiency. If your people are better at knocking out the stuff that AI can do, then that means they have more time to focus on the things that AI can't do. And also, the amount of time and energy it takes to learn AI is, extremely limited. I mean, extremely negligible. I mean, you can, if you give, and I actually just did this, I just put on an AI class for our administrative folks. I mean, you can do a 2 or 3 hour class for your people with someone who's, fluent with AI. And in an extremely short period of time, you can get a large quantity of people fluent enough with AI that they can start using LLMs to write reports or, building tables or Excel tables or whatever. And you can really get people pretty solid on it in a very short amount of time. So it's an extremely low cost investment that can increase your productivity. There's actually two studies that have been done on this by MIT and Harvard, and they found that an organization or individuals rather can increase their productivity by anywhere from 15 to 40%. So that's substantial. And the interesting thing also was that the people that saw the highest improvement in their productivity were your lowest performers. So it's a very easy way to massively increase the productivity. And 40% increase in productivity is massive, to be clear, to massively increase the productivity of your people. So back to the sort of original question, should firefighters be learning this and is it too early? Absolutely not. It's not too early. But also I would say it's not too late either. I think sometimes people can feel like, oh, I'm already very behind. Everyone else already knows how to do this. And that's definitely not the case. I've had a lot of conversations through this podcast with, some different people that are in the AI space. I just had a great conversation with Dean May on agentic AI. That's probably like a month or two ago. A really great episode. I highly recommend it. And he's saying, even in the business world, you've got all these startups and they're still struggling to figure out how to use it and where to use it. So you're really not behind. So it's not too early and it's not too late either. I would say this is a great time to go out and learn AI. All right, let's see what we've got here. Oh, another one from Wisconsin. Man, that's cool. Nicole from Wisconsin says, if someone wants to earn their PMP, what's the biggest piece of advice you'd give them? Biggest piece. Okay. So your PMP, which is project management professional, and that is the sort of like industry recognized certification for being a project manager. There's a couple levels to it. There's CAPM, which is Certified Associate in Project Management, and then there's PMP, Project Management Professional. Both of those are offered through PMI, which is the Project Management Institute. And they're really, first of all, it's a really widely recognized certification. It's a globally recognized cert. People in the business world recognize it. It's obviously very valuable for the fire department. That's kind of, it's kind of the whole thing we're doing here. So yeah, great certification to go out and get, and definitely a great kind of differentiator because, you can find a ton of people in the fire service that have, their EFO or CFO, CERT or whatever, or all these different things, but there's not a lot of PMPs in the fire department, not a lot at all. So if you are looking for some way to differentiate yourself, I think it's a really great option to pursue. It's also just an incredibly useful body of knowledge. Now, that being said, the PMP exam is extremely difficult. It's a lot to learn. And so a lot of times you'll hear people say, well, it's one of the hardest technical certifications to get. It's really difficult. You might have heard some people in the IT world particularly that maybe tried to get it and couldn't. And so what I would say to that is that can absolutely be the case if you kind of just wing it and you go and maybe find a little app that has PMP style questions and you try to like watch a few videos or whatever. Or even if you go through like an online certification or online course that, because, actually, I should have said this at the beginning. In order to even sit for the PMP exam, you have to have 35 hours of project management training, as well as, being able to document a certain number of projects that you've been a part of. And so a lot of times people will go and they'll take like an online course, which you can find a bunch of those on Coursera, ranging from free to, thousands of dollars, whatever, everything in between. And then they'll just think that's enough and they'll go out and try to take the PMP exam. And for some people that is enough, but what I would recommend is there are some great like accelerated prep courses that you can take that, they go on for like, I don't know, several weeks or whatever. And some of them count as the educational part, like the 35 hours that you need. And the one that I used and that I recommend to everybody, it's amazing, is All In PMP Prep with Scott Payne. Phenomenal program. It counts as your 35 hours. He just is a phenomenal simplifier, which is great for this kind of stuff. And so he can take complicated project management and business world concepts and explain them in a really, really basic and easy to comprehend way. So highly, highly recommend that. So I would say that's the biggest piece of advice I would give is just find a really good prep program that simplifies this stuff, because if you just go through kind of like an online course or something, it can be really difficult to really internalize the stuff that you need. And also, it's such a broad body of knowledge. I mean, you're talking about like agile project management, traditional project management, all these different concepts. And so it's tough to know like what's actually going to be on the exam. And so for that reason, those prep programs are very, very valuable. So that's what I would recommend. Okay, Greg from Alabama says, have you ever had to tell a chief that a project wasn't a good idea? How did you handle it? Yes, I have. And this is it's a tough conversation to have, because a lot of times when a chief is coming to you with a project, it's something that they feel strongly about. Because typically, if a project isn't a good idea, the projects that tend to be not good ideas are people's little pet projects, the things that they think are really valuable or really important, but maybe aren't the best thing for the organization, or maybe aren't even possible. When you have a process where multiple different stakeholders are involved and they all get together and really look at what the organization needs, those tend to be well-conceived projects. So the projects that tend to not be good are, some chief sees something and they want to fix it, or they want to, implement their idea or whatever, and they kind of fly off half-cocked, and they want you to basically be a magic man and take an idea that sucks and turn it into, or do some magic and turn it into an executed project. And there's costs to that. And listen, I'll say, just kind of full transparency, I've been on both sides of the ledger on this. I have tried to execute what I knew was a bad project, and I just was like, well, this is what they want, so I'll just do it. And I've also then been on the other side where I'm like, hey, look, this is just not going to work. Or even if we could make this work, this is not, we're basically building a bridge out of dirt here. It's going to wash away. This isn't going to last or whatever. So having done both of those, I would say it's much, much better to be upfront when a project is either not going to succeed, or even if it succeeds, it's not going to be a good thing. And the reason for that is projects, first of all, organizations have a very limited amount of bandwidth, regardless of the size of your organization. The fire department I work for is a pretty big organization, 23 fire stations, nearly 700 firefighters. And we really can only do one or two or three big things at a time. And so if you're going to take the organization's resources and bandwidth and dedicate them to something, it really had better be worth that dedication of resources. So you don't want to waste resources and time and money and all that kind of stuff. And then the other thing is that, there's a cost to change. When you do something different, or you ask your workforce to do something different, there's a cost to the end user, which is firefighters. And there's really only so many times you can go to the well on that kind of stuff. If you change something new or implement something new all the time, it's going to get harder and harder to do it because your people are sick of it. So, you need to be, there's a responsibility to organizing and implementing projects. And for those reasons, it's important to be judicious about it. So how do you tell them it's not a good idea? Well, I would say, like, just coming straight out and saying, "Hey, this is a dumb project," is not going to be your best option. What you really want to do is be able to explain logically either why it won't work or why it's not a good idea. And that often requires research and talking to some stakeholders. For example, they want to implement a new piece of equipment they saw at a conference. And, hey, I just saw this thing. It looks great. Let's do this. So, go talk to your IT people, figure out, oh, hey, this isn't actually going to integrate with this software, or we can't use it with this, or whatever. Then put together basically an executive summary and say, look, here's the IT concerns, here's the budget concerns, here's the implementation timeline, and then go to them with hard data, hard facts, and say, these are the challenges we're going to run into. It's going to cost, this much more money than we think. It's going to take a long time. It's going to absorb these resources. It won't integrate with this system or this technology, and just lay it all out there. And, the overwhelming majority of chiefs are going to look at that and go, yeah, you're right. This wasn't actually a well-conceived plan. And if they still want to do it, just make them very aware, like, here's what we're looking at. And then if, obviously it's ultimately their decision depending on what kind of chief it is and where you fall in the rank structure. And if they still want to do it, okay, just be honest throughout and transparent. Don't sabotage it or anything, but, really make them aware of what they're asking for. Because a lot of times they're just not aware of what they're asking for, especially if you're a real go-getter and you can, you're the kind of person that doesn't miss and like, hey, look, whatever you want me to implement, I'll get it done. They a lot of times will look at those people like, oh, this guy's going to do magic and he'll make this, harebrained idea come to life. So just really make them aware of what they're asking for and what it's going to cost, the organization and them and on and on. And that's how I would recommend going about that. Okay, let's see. You've talked a lot about leadership on your podcast. What's one leadership lesson you had to learn the hard way? Chris from Idaho. Okay, so I would say, I don't know if it's like necessarily the biggest one, but one thing I've learned is, obviously it's important to be good at your job and it's important to be knowledgeable and proficient, but what makes people gravitate towards a leader is not necessarily that they know everything or that they're the best at everything. They're the best firefighter, the best medic, the best whatever. It's a lot of other things. And so I think one of the big mistakes I made was thinking that, if you want to be a good lieutenant or a good captain, you have to know everything and you have to be the best at everything. And that's just not true at all. I think people would much rather feel supported and that you care about them and that you're going to look out for them and that you are accountable. So like when you make mistakes, you own it, you admit it, you don't blame other people, you don't blame the system, the dispatcher, the crew, whatever. You can accept ownership over things. That you are, when people on your team make a mistake, you're going to have their back and you're going to support them and you're going to be consistent. Consistency is absolutely critical. People want, our job is very all over the place. You never know what you're going to get. You come into work, you could have a busy day, you could have a slow day, you could have a fire, you could have no fire, whatever. So it's so all over the place that, it's so important then for you, the leader, to be consistent and to say like, hey, we're going to do this. This is my expectation of you. If these lines are crossed, this is what's going to happen. And people really, they appreciate that consistency. And I think, we can get lost in, the sort of ego side of the fire service where we want to be the best at everything. But that's not, I think, what people want in a leader. And it's been my experience both with the best leaders I've had and the teams that I've led, that people really aren't looking for that. They want to feel supported. They want to feel like you're going to have their back. They want to feel like you're an honest broker, that you're a real person, that they can talk to. And that goes so much farther than just being the best at forcible entry or line pulling or whatever. People really gravitate towards those kinds of leaders. And I think, you listening now, think back on the leaders that you've really enjoyed working for the most. And it's not because they, had the most fire department trivia or whatever. These were people that you felt, a real connection with, that you could go talk to and trust. So that's one of the biggest leadership lessons I would say is, yeah, you can impress people with all your skills or whatever, but that's not, I think, what makes the best leaders in the fire service. Okay. Stephanie from Virginia, the great state of Virginia, my home state. What project are you the most proud of in your career? Man, easy. So in 2023, and I've probably talked about this on the podcast, but in 2023, there was a bunch of changes that happened at the federal level with the Drug Safety Supply Chain Act, DCSA, I think it is. Anyways, it doesn't matter. About basically how drugs could be the custodian stewardship of drugs. And so the long and short of it is, what that meant is that the state of Virginia in particular, and I think also maybe Hawaii, were the only two states that were doing a hospital-based drug box exchange program. So that, basically like, you're on an ambulance, you give midazolam for a seizure, and then you go to the hospital and you give them your whole drug kit with, the used drug and all that kind of stuff. And then they give you a new kit and you log that in, and now that's your drug box. But the problem that ran into is the DEA and the FDA and all these other people basically said, well, then who owns the drugs? Is it the hospital that gave it to you? Is it the ambulance that's currently in possession of them? Or is it the hospital that you exchange it with, or whatever? So that wouldn't work. That system did not work. And so they implemented a change which said that every fire department had to essentially either open up their own pharmacy or partner with another pharmacy or whatever. But couldn't do hospital-based exchanges. And the rollout of this from the federal and state level was atrocious. It was absolutely atrocious. There was very poor communication from the state and from the federal government, and there was basically the long and short of it is we ended up with an extremely tight timeline to open a fully functioning pharmacy for a department with 23 stations and 700 people. So we had to figure out a supply chain. How are we going to get these drugs? How are we going to store them safely and in compliance with the FDA? How are we going to track them in compliance with the DEA? And, if we need to do a recall, how do we track them by batch? So we needed to implement software to then track all these medications. We needed a distribution system. So, okay, the medications arrive at this central hub, our logistics hub. Excuse me. How do we then get them to all the fire stations? And then once they're at the fire stations, how do we secure them in the apparatus that they're going in? And then we needed a reverse distribution system. So once people use the medications, how do they exchange them for a new kit? And then we needed to train 700 people in how to use a new system, a brand new system, which is totally different than the one that the fire department had for the last, 40 years or whatever. Then we needed to communicate all this to the department, to the community, to our local elected officials. And so it was this massive, massive, massive project that we had to do. Oh, and write new protocols, new policies, new governance documents, all that sort of stuff, to come up with a diversion investigation process. So many different elements to this project. And we had like just a handful of months, like 3-4 months to get this done. So an unbelievable amount of work with an extremely tight timeline. And we implemented essentially an agile project where we met once a week, divided these different tasks. We were running a Kanban board, so basically like tracking tasks to each person that they were assigned to. And the project was a huge success. To this day, we're still using the pharmacy system that we designed and implemented. And, I'm really proud of that project. I think that's a really cool one. I was the project manager for it, and it was great for a lot of reasons. Number one, obviously it was successful, but it really kind of proved to me that project management is critical for the fire service. And if it's done right, you can get some incredible things done. And it was sort of the jump off point for me to then open up our project management office and standardize our documents. And really it was the predicate for me to want to start this podcast and, write the book, Project Management in the Fire Service. It's like, let's go down this road and figure out how can we take concepts from the business world, project management, which is a long, very thoroughly tested concept. It's been around since the 40s. And how do we implement it in the fire service, knowing that we have challenges that are unique to us? We have shift work, we have high turnover in administrative roles. The business language terminology doesn't make a ton of sense to firefighters. The metrics are different. We don't care about ROI or cost per new customer. We care about community and workforce outcomes. So how can we implement all this? And so anyways, the project itself was really eye-opening to me, and it really proved that there's a huge need there and a huge gap. And I'm also just really proud of what we were able to accomplish. So yeah, I would say that's probably the project that I am the most proud of. Okay. What advice would you give to someone who wants to move from operations into an administrative role? Kevin from Georgia. Great question. I've done this. This is something I've had to personally figure out. I would say a few things here. First off, when you first move from operations into admin, you're going to find that you don't have that much going on straight away. Like you'll get up there, you'll get into your new role, and for the first couple months, there's just not that much going on. And there's a lot of reasons for that. People are, not dumping a ton of work on your plate. They're trying to give you a chance to get your feet underneath you. And other stuff like, you're still kind of figuring out exactly what you're supposed to be doing and what meetings you need to be in and what processes are yours and what you need to fix and all that kind of stuff. But there's this temptation because firefighters are such go-getters. You're going to get in there and you're going to be like, man, I don't have that much going on. I'm going to start filling my plate with everything I can find. Everything that's broken or not ideal or that hasn't been assigned to someone else, I'm going to just take them all on because I have the time. And so, you go out there and you find all these things and you fill your plate up. And then after a few months, the work starts to come in. People say, hey, I need you to be in this meeting or I need you to take over this thing. So then you have a really, really full plate. And that's, and then that's sort of a ticket or, a fast track to being overwhelmed quickly and then getting frustrated and, you hate your job and all this other stuff. So what I would recommend is when you first get into administration, take the time to figure out the sort of like the inner working of the system. How do you schedule meetings? Who does, reserves conference rooms? Who do you talk to in HR? Who do you talk to in legal? Who's your counterpart with police? All those little things. Who do you go to for this? Who do you go to for that? Figure out how the system works. Not unlike when you're a brand new firefighter, you're not training on complex stuff. You're learning, hey, what is in this compartment? What's in this compartment? How do we get from here to the place where we get fuel? Figure out the basic stuff first before you start piling a bunch of work on your plate. And then take the time to learn the systems, like figure out what you're going to actually need. Do I need Excel? Do I need Microsoft Office? Do I need AI? Whatever it is, figure out what technology you need and then get someone to show you how to use it. Even if you're baseline competent in it, get someone to show you how to use it because there may be some specific use cases that you need to know or understand for your new position. So take the time to get your feet underneath you before you start piling work on your plate. That's probably the single most important thing from moving from operations to admin. But also, I would say you really need to find a way to stay connected to operations. Otherwise, you're going to have an identity crisis because being a firefighter is such a big part of who we all are. We see ourselves as a firefighter. You've got all the shirts, you got all the patches, the challenge coins. And so when you're not riding on a fire truck, it's very easy to get demoralized and have that identity crisis. And so I would say try to get out and ride on the medic or the engine or whatever so you can stay proficient because those skills are perishable. You'll get them back quickly, but you want to stay up on things because it's a bad feeling when you feel like you've lost skills. So that for one, you want that, but then also it keeps you connected to the part of the job that you actually care about the most. So find a way to stay connected to operations, and also just, go back and visit your old shift, or, get out and check in with the guys, whatever you need to do to stay connected. But number one is learn the systems before you start piling work on your plate. All right, let's see. Kevin from Michigan says, if you weren't in the fire, and this is the last one, by the way, I think this will be the last one we do. So Kevin from Michigan says, if you weren't in the fire service, what do you think you'd be doing? Man, great question, Kevin. I think at different times in my life, I would have said different things. My passion outside of the fire service is high altitude mountaineering. So I think there's a very high likelihood, especially now, that if I was to leave the fire service, I'd probably just, go be a mountain guide. Whether that's the best use of my time or the thing I'm the best at, I don't know, but it's certainly the thing that I get the most sort of fulfillment from. I absolutely love being outside. I love being on mountains, just in the mountains. I like the ropes side of it. I enjoy the navigation. I enjoy sleeping outside in a tent. The physical challenge of it I really like. So I think there's a very high likelihood I'd be doing that. Although there's also a very high likelihood that my wife would not allow that, just, from the risk and being gone so much. So I think I've really enjoyed the process of writing a book. I was really nervous about it because obviously it's something I'd never done. And it's just intimidating, but I really enjoyed both writing it and publishing it and talking about it. And so I think there's a likelihood I would also write more books. Obviously I'm doing the podcast, so I'd probably double down on that, probably do more episodes, maybe try to do it a daily thing if I could. So I think there's a likelihood I would do that. I'm also so interested in making project management in the fire service work, like the concept of it work. So maybe I don't know, I guess like part of me says consulting, but then my sister was a consultant for a while, and it seems like a really soul-sucking industry. So probably not that, actually. I don't know. Yeah, I think if I'm going to pick something to make me happy, probably climbing mountains. If I'm going to pick something to make money, probably consulting. If I'm going to, just kind of do the things that I'm kind of doing now, but at a larger scale, I would say write more books, do more podcast episodes, maybe even start another podcast. That's probably it. I think, it's tough too to answer this because I've wanted to be a firefighter my whole life. This ever since I was like, I think 2 years old. That's what I wanted to do. There's pictures of me on Halloween, almost every year dressed as a firefighter. So it's really all I've ever wanted to do. So it's hard to imagine what it would be if it wasn't this. But yeah, I don't know. I guess that's probably a pretty good guess at what I'd be doing. So, all right, guys. Well, that's it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in, and it's great to be back. I, really enjoyed having a week off, spending time with the family, but it's great to be back here talking to you guys. And as always, we've got through as many questions as we can. I have 2 or 3 more. I'll save them for our next Q&A. But if you have any questions, please email me, projectcommandpodcast@gmail.com. Please go pick up a copy of my book, Project Management in the Fire Service. I'm so grateful for all the support. It's a really great way to help support what we're doing here at the podcast. We don't run ads, so it's a great way to kind of support the mission. And if you want to get a signed copy, I would be very happy to get one in the mail for you. Again, just email me, projectcommandpodcast@gmail.com, or hit me up on LinkedIn. And as always, I'll just kind of float this out there. I love talking through people's projects with them. I consider it part of my research process. So if you've got a project that you're working on and you want to bounce some ideas around, or you want some help structuring it, I really enjoy doing that. Shoot me an email. We can set up a time to talk, obviously for free. I don't charge for that. Like I said, I consider it part of my research. So, all right, guys, have a great week. And see you guys next time.